Every great team in CS history, whether that's 1.6 or other versions, needs a star player if it's going to be a truly great team. If it's going to be a team that wins world championships, it's going to be a team that has a consistency of being in the top 3, the top 4 in the world, and really going up against the other best teams. Because yes, the team unit must be good. It must fit the style must fit the personnel, the style that's used must fit the metagame in some sense, that it's viable, that it actually is effective. Doesn't have to be the most efficient, but it has to be effective. It has to have a force, a vitality, a power behind it, and that drives it forwards and allows it to have an impact, a tangible component in the game. But beyond the team component, and yes, you have to have pieces that fit together and complementary aspects where this support player works with this player to make him a bit better, and this versatile player maybe sacrifices this part of his game to make the team stronger here. But at the end of the day, one of the key factors that pushes teams over the brink when it's a close game or they're slightly behind is the star player. The star player is the guy who, if he's a big fragger, he can drop 30. If he's an amazing clutch player, he wins those 2 key 1v3s and 1v2s that keep you in the game or win the game for you. If he's a player who's an incredible consistency player, he's the rock from which you build your game forwards, and other players don't have to be big fraggers all the time or have a huge impact. They can just contribute here or there, or one has to contribute and the other one doesn't as much because you've got this consistency. Whatever the aspect, maybe he's the guy who just hits insane shots and he can hit shots that no one else can. It can demoralize the opponent. It can get you out of trouble. It can get you into a game. It can dominate a game when you're ahead. The star player is a key component. And if you look back through history, even if obviously the best teams of all time maybe had more than one star player, 1, 2, 3 star players, depending on what sort of combination they went for in terms of their unit. You look back and every great team had them. Even in North America, the great North American 1.6 teams, Team 3D, they had K-Sharp, they had Rambo. You go further back, you go further forwards rather, Complexity, the team that became the best team in the world in 2005, this North American team. They had Fraud. Keep going to any era of the greatest teams ever and the stars are always there. Even the one-offs that win tournaments. So MIBR wins ESWC 2006. Kogu, one of the greatest AWPers ever. You go to Emulate, who won WCG 2007, big shock. They go MSX, one of the most skilled players in the history of the game with all weapons. The star player, you can have all the other components, but if you have all the other components, and we know all the best teams, Fnatic, LDLC, Virtus Pro, these teams all have all those same components to differing degrees, but if they have the star on top of it, just like in something like basketball or hockey, at the end of the day, the star players are the ones who can make magical things happen. So it's going to be very hard to win without one. The reason I set this up like this is because a problem I noticed in CSGO, which endures to this day, is that NA, North America, has no true star player. No one who can truly be put on that level. Sometimes one has a game here, or he's in this team and he looks good in this sense, and he can have impact in this degree, but not to quite the same degree as the star player does. So let's talk a bit about some of the players out there. I mean, when people sometimes get a bit annoyed at this, or they just don't understand this kind of theory of the star player and it existing. But I would say it like this. Look aside from NA for a moment. Just look at the early era of CSGO and try and think of who the stars were, who the biggest impact single players were. And you'll get names like Get Right, Forest for NIP, Kenny S, Very Games, and then LDLC, Dosia, Virtus Pro, Astana Dragons, coming now into Hellraisers, Shocks, obviously. He was obviously doing incredible work in Very Games Titan since Epsilon. Now he's in LDLC. Nico was a force in the early Western Wolves team, which didn't have a lot of skill, but he was the main star who could carry him in that sense. They had the structure around him. Let's go to the latter day. You've got names like Guardian, can hit any shot in the world. It seems like the fastest shot in the West. Device can be a monster against teams that are worse than his team. He can destroy these guys and take them apart like few other teams can. His aggression, his AWPing, his rifling, it's amazing stuff. Bialy from Virtus Pro. His aim can be as crazy as anyone's in the world for a brief moment, for 3 rounds in a row or 1 key round, but his skill level's so high when it's on top. Crims. This guy dominates from just consistency, a stable rock bed that you can base a team on, and he's going to drop frags, and he's going to get 25 frags, and he's going to defend small site on Inferno, and he's going to defend the large site on Mirage. And this game of consistency and just grinding the opponent down, 1 or 2 kills here, 1 or 2 kills there, you come here, I take the obvious kill, another 2 kills here, 1 kill here, win a 1v1, hold up the enemies as they come in, communicate with my team. This way to impact key aspects of the game like fragging, but other aspects too. You look at obviously JW in Fnatic. This guy can go for the craziest shots and hit them. He can have insane sequences of 3 or 4 kills that no other player seemingly would even go for and definitely couldn't get. We can all see the stars when we line them out like this, and we know that they're stars. We know that how they play in their team, the huge impact they have on the win or the loss. You look at a Na'Vi game and Guardian doesn't play well, it's rare they win. Look at a Titan game, Kenny S doesn't hit those shots. Titan aren't going to beat a Fnatic or an LDLC. If they do, then they definitely can. The impact, yes, the rest is all important. It must be there, the structure and the approach and the style and the understanding of complementary players, but the star is important too. Take the star away and put in another good player, these teams don't have the same sort of impact or potential to win. So now let's look at the North American names who we discuss in this conversation. And we'll start with the most obvious name, Nothing, Jordan Gilbert. This is the guy who is the original attempted star. In the latter days of 1.6, he was the name that came along, and you saw his frag movie and his skill level was very, very high, and he would have these crazy games online. And he had one godlike game offline against Fnatic in 2008 where he destroyed them on CT side of Train, but really it was just that one game. Beyond that, he'd have some games where he had good games and he top fragged, he did well, and against North American opponents he always did well, but internationally he never truly flourished into that star. He never truly was on the level of a Forrest or a Kogu or a Markelov. These sorts of players, he couldn't quite make it there in terms of nerve issues on LAN, performance, just being able to output a high performance each time, even just being able to frag heavily against the top teams, doing that well in the clutch situations. He had his issues, and so the reason I bring that up is because people still look to him in CSGO like, you could be the star. This guy could be the star if all these things happened, if he was on his game and if he got his head shorted and all the rest of it. The problem is, that's not going to happen. The guy's literally been around playing at the top level now since 2008. So we're talking 6 years. He hasn't got this magical potential that he's going to unlock now. What you get from him now is what you should expect and what you should plan into what's going to happen in his team. He's not going to provide the kind of consistency. He's not going to be like a Crim's insane consistency. He's not going to have huge games like a Guardian, a Kenny S, a Device, a JW. He's not going to have those monster 35 frag halves in top level international competition. And so, unfortunately, he has good aim and he has times when he does well, and he can be a key part in that team, the Cloud9 team, but he can't be the NA star. That ship has sailed in a sense. So let's go to the one after Nothing. The guy after Nothing, and he came up at the very end of 1.6, the very end, when the scene was pretty depleted, was Swag. And this was this 15-year-old guy, much like Nothing. It's a really young guy, a lot of skill, obviously quite early on adapts to playing on LAN. And actually this guy, the key thing about Swag was actually quite early he developed in a fairly clutch player. Now we know him as like the best lurker in North America, the guy who's maybe the best at clutching rounds, the best under that sort of pressure. But what are his downsides? First of all, he is a little inconsistent in his game. Sometimes he just has an okay game, sometimes he has that really good game. He doesn't talk enough. That's a problem, because you can see in his teams, one of the problems is if you're the lurker, I actually think the lurker, if he has good communication, can have a huge impact on the game. I'm thinking of guys like Get Right, obviously, but crucially, NBK when he was in very games in Titan. This guy used to almost make the rush at the other side, or the attack at the other side, work by having perfect communication in terms of what he was going to do and knowing what the team leader wanted from him and hearing their communication of when he should make attacks and draw attention or backstab. He could have such a wide impact. I get the feeling, looking at Swag and seeing his problems and not communicating often and just playing in his own little bubble and tunnel visioning, that aspect isn't there. Yes, he can still win the 1v2. Yes, he can backstab great. Yes, he can be the sick or lurker that gets that kill. But without that aspect, he's not having that team-wide aspect. He's not making teammates better. He's just doing his part and being good. So, okay, he's the best clutcher, but he's not the NA star. Let's move down again. Now we'll go to Skadoodle. Now, Skadoodle's the guy who came over and he wasn't a CSGO player natively. I think he came from Call of Duty or something. And this guy's a sick AWPer. He is the best AWPer in North America, and it's not even close. What's crucial is not only is his hit rate really good and his actual raw skill and flicking with the AWP really sick, but he has these weird angles he takes to peek when he goes there. He doesn't go from the default angle. He has some kind of a weird way of thinking about the game, and it's effective. I've seen halves where he played like the best AWPer in the world. I remember a game at Gfinity in the decider on Dust 2 against Titan. Kenny S he was playing against. Kenny S is by far the best AWPer in the history of CSGO. This guy is a god. You almost can't out-AWP him. I see guys like Guardian and JW get shook trying to play versus Kenny S, because he just picks them apart with a hit rate and a speed and a consistency that they can't match all three or two out of the three. And so they get rattled, they go away, they start using rifles, they start not taking that angle, they start playing back and allowing his teams to get more ground and gain more ground and him to take the first shot, and he's killed them a few times and he's deterred them enough that it breaks their game and they're not able to do what they want to do. This hasn't happened with Skadoodle. I've seen Skadoodle again and again go up against the best players with the AWP, and in general, he's actually been able to have times when he really did out-AWP them. In that game I'm talking about there, he was out-AWPing Kenny S early on. He was dropping something insane like 25, 30 frags against Titan in this deciding. You think, wow, he's going to carry this iBuyPower team past Titan. But then what happened? He started to fade. In the toughest moments, he fades a bit under pressure. He gets nervous. His confidence seems to get rattled. He got killed a few times with Kenny S. Suddenly he dropped away. He wasn't getting any kills. He wasn't having any impact. He was trying to buy the AWP. Sometimes he was getting picked or it wasn't working, and he couldn't get an entry. He couldn't even do anything with it. He was just a stationary target doing nothing for his team, and he faded. And part of the problem is it seems like he doesn't have a good connection with his team. This is a guy who never speaks. I've watched him on LAN, and I've almost never heard him say anything when I've stood near his team. No matter what is going on in the game, he just doesn't speak. So okay, he's the sickest AWPer, but he's not the NA star. Here's the problem. When I say he doesn't talk, I'll give you an example. Face It Season 2 LAN Finals. iBuyPower have an incredible run. They go to the final. They managed to beat Fnatic on Dust 2. Fnatic wins Inferno. Fnatic wins... What would the other map have been? I assume Mirage? I forget one of the maps. Anyway, the fourth map, here's the crucial thing. The fourth map... I think it was Mirage, actually. The fourth map was Nuke. And in this game... Fnatic gets the 6 CT half. They get tons of rounds up, but then on the second half, as sometimes happens with Fnatic, they run out of ideas, that Products isn't reading the game well, and it just grinds to a halt, and they're just not getting rounds. They're stuck near the winning amount, and it's getting closer and closer. iBuyPower's getting more and more and more rounds. And Skadoodle's hitting some great shots, and they're playing great, and iBuyPower look like, wow, they're going to go to a 5th map here. They're going in this best of 5. They're going to take this best of 5 to the limit. And in the last round of regulation, with the game at 15-14 to Fnatic, Fnatic goes outside, and this time, Skadoodle's been in the garage, that sort of area, opening the whole time. But he's over on the far side this time, on the left, looking like sort of diagonally across this way as you do in case they're going to cross into the mini. And so you can't see the secret quite. But he's peeking out. They throw in, I can't remember if it was a smoke or a Molotov, but it pushes him back behind here. So he can't see if they're going secret. And he just and I was watching, and he just sits there and he doesn't say anything. And he just keeps holding that angle. And he looks out a bit. And at this time, they have gone secret. All of Fnatic have gone secret down there. Dazed is playing above the ladder and rotating down to the ramp room. That's what he's doing, going like this. And there's a point in the game, he told me this, where he just sort of thinks to himself, like, they haven't come upper at all. We haven't seen anything ramp. I haven't heard any kills outside. So could they have gone secret? And he says to Skadoodle, could they have gone secret? And Skadoodle just sort of looks over and says, I guess. And almost... I don't want to make this too dramatic, but I think in the story, almost exactly around that moment was when like that message just came up on the screen, like, bomb has been planted. Now, I don't know if you know much about Nuke in CSGO or historically in 1.6, but it should be absolutely impossible that 5 terrorists get alive to the lower site, plant the bomb with 5 CTs alive. That situation, and not only that, without them knowing. That situation should almost be impossible, and I would wager... except for something insane, and I would say it probably has never happened, at top international level Counter-Strike, that scenario has never happened in history. I would be willing to wager that much. Where everyone had full guns, full armor, everything, and the all 5 Ts got to the bottom site, planted it without anyone dying whatsoever from CT or T. I would wager that's never happened, and it only happened because Skadoodle failed to communicate some simple information, never mind nuanced things like tactics and specific setups, some simple information that's very, very basic that every top-level pro must be able to do. So you can see, this guy has the skills. Like, if I had to pick anyone on this list, he would definitely be one of my leading candidates. But his communication aspects and all the other aspects outside of shooting people inside that crosshair are what's holding this guy back and actually will impact his team in a negative sense as much as he brings an incredible skill presence. 2 more names. Shroud. Now, this guy, without knowing what Skadoodle's problems were, I thought, okay, actually Shroud's the next candidate because he came out of nowhere, yet immediately ESL1 Cologne is playing awesome. He played great later on going forwards. He actually played quite well at Face It. ESWC, not bad. The big problem was DreamHack Winter, he had a fairly poor tournament. It felt like he ran out of steam as a player a bit, and his just level wasn't as high as it had been when he first joined Cloud9. Very skilled player. One of the most skilled in the region for sure. Skill at aiming and skill level really high. Technique is really nice. Started out so strong, like I say. His problem, like I say, he hasn't really been able to maintain that level. It's dropping a bit, and it's gotten a bit wobbly, and it seems as though maybe his confidence has been shaken a bit, and his communication's dropped off a little bit. So I thought, okay, he's in the running to become it, but maybe he's going to become the most skilled in North America. He can definitely take that title, but he doesn't seem like he's the NA star in terms of all that a star plays, all the extreme skill level that the star needs to be able to impact and output delivery-wise every single time he plays. So we've got one name left. And this guy is the best player in North America, but he's not the NA star. Hiko. Now, the key thing about Hiko is he is stable. This is the guy who's the really good passive player. He holds the spot. He knows 3 guys are coming. He's going to kill the first 2. He's going to get them communication going to his team to know that they're coming, and the 3rd one will be coming here, and that's where he was. And he'll have a great impact on a lot of the team, and he'll get the kills. And I think he's the best fragger in North America. Forget skill and aiming and AWPing and lurking and all that stuff. Just getting frags on the board and getting frags in a game, this guy's the best at doing it. The problem is he isn't hit back by a lot of the flaws these other names are. With some of them, if they could get over one of those flaws, they could be the star. Hiko has kind of maxed his game out in a sense. He's doing everything he can. He's quite polished. He's practiced. He's experienced. He's figured out a lot of his game. He understands his limit of how to play and what he can do and what he can't do and what sort of opponents he's going to play against. There's a guy who's thought it through in that sense and thought through the types of people he's going to battle and what he has to do differently against them. And so as a result, what you see with Hiko really is what you get. The others, maybe there's room forwards and backwards. They can become worse or better. I feel like with Hiko, we kind of know exactly what it is. And it's not quite the level of a Forest or a Device or Guardian or Kenny S. It's not quite on that level. He's still slightly below. He can have games where he can match them depending on what they're doing. But he's not going to be at their level with that consistency and be the star. Also, unfortunately, he's the guy who had that great stability all those tournaments, but at this very last tournament, DreamHack Winter, that really was an off tournament for him. He did not have a good tournament. In the past majors, he had performed well. This time, not the case. So out of all those names, we've got Nothing, Swag, Skadoodle, Shroud, Hiko. I've got 5 names for you, all who at some point in time or by some reference, people would say they are the NA stars or they are a star or they could be the star. Okay, they all had times where maybe they could have. I'd say Nothing, that's eliminated now. Swag, it seems unlikely, just looking at the type of player he is. Skadoodle would have to seriously either become even sicker in-game and get rid of any nerves and just start dominating every time, or he's got to improve that communication. Shroud has the tools, he just hasn't had long enough to prove it, and crucially, he has dropped off a little bit recently, so he has to get that level back up and he has to prove it with more tournaments. I mean, listen, he's playing through, in theory, the weaker NA team, and as much as iBuyPower's outshined them in the past tournaments, so if he can elevate them above and then make them a world-class team, he'll definitely be in the running to be this NA star. And lastly, Hiko, I don't think he can be the NA star. I think he's just a very solid player. He's going to be what he is, and his best approach, just stick with doing that. It's not going to get 1.5 times better than he is now, so the search for the NA star goes on. Maybe a new name will come forwards. Maybe one of these names can make it. But until that happens, I think NA teams will always be like that. They'll always be on the brink of the 5th, 8th teams. And they'll be hoping to get a good upset, have a sick run maybe. But they're not going to win the huge tournament. And they're not going to consistently place top 4, top 3, top 2 at these international lands until they have that component to go with the other components.